Over the past couple of years, ShadowDark has taken over the TTRPG community, and most of the time we are pretty much just playing fantasy games in the genre. But have you ever wanted to play Firefly? Or anything along those lines, still using the ShadowDark rules, being able to make your own ships, steal ships, piracy, buying and selling trade if you don't want to go down the full piracy Firefly type of route. Do you want to be sort of fighting sort of giant ships and monsters in space? Well, if the answer is yes, I think I may have been sent the book to look at. So this book is coming on Kickstarter so it probably will be on Kickstarter now when you're watching this video. And let's just get straight over and actually just take a look at what we've got here. So here we've got AetherDark, which is a 308 page, which is why it manages to cram so much into the book. Cover art is, well, I assume this is the cover art that's going to be sent. This copy has been sent to me to look at before the Kickstarter go live. I'll just take you through who it's. So Mika Albrix has sent me. So this design, layout, writing, maps, all by Mika himself. So this is a preview copy. So there might be some changes to the book. Can't imagine there's going to be a huge amount. It feels very complete. There is even I've noticed a couple of spelling errors in the book, but it's just utterly huge. Right, let's just get back then into the cover art here. And so we are based in space. There are rules though for designing planets, landing on planets, dealing with planets, buying and selling trade ports, even down to stars and flat earths if you want that sort of thing in here. Initially getting into the book, we've got this, I'm assuming this might be a DM screen or probably the inside cover of the book, which ShadowDark seems to do so well. So we've got some tables here, which are going to be really handy as the game goes on. We've got the ship classes, the types of ships in the game, some modifications, deck upgrades, so you can buy and build your own ship, the ship armor, put rams on there, ballistas, any sort of ammo, bottled or hurled ammo at your opponents. Right, so let's get into a little bit more of the book itself. So this is really the sort of breakdown of all the sort of keywords in the book. As you can see back from the tables, so you've got hull, speed, move, ability, size, attack, crew, etc. So this just breaks down what all the sort of the shortened words and are going to be throughout the whole of the book. So we've got things on the ship, the crew, siege weapons, boarding actions, lighting, distance, and mass combat. So there's three big things in this. You're going to have your ship, you're going to have your crew, and then you're going to have the sort of going out into space themselves. So your ship's going to have its own stats, size, the crew required, etc. Your crew are going to have their own stats, skills, morale, and special abilities, and they're going to level up as the game goes on. But there's more than that in the book as well. It covers naval movement, closing in, pursuits, travelling, landing and taking off on planets. Right, let's get into the vast table of contents here. And it's all hyperlinked, which is ace. I really like that. We've got two pages of contents, then a further just sort of spread out. But initially, it was just explaining what is AetherDark, details on the crew, and then most of the first chunk of the book, so almost a third of the book, is down into sort of ships. We've then got 20 pages on gameplay, another 20 pages on travelling through the ether. Games Master advice is about 30 pages. The ether itself, another 15. Terrain comes in just under 30 pages. And then we've got 50 pages roundabout on worlds, creating worlds. And then the rest of the book is enemies and beastry, even including these amazingly interesting leviathans here, which are gigantic space monsters. And then when you flip over, it just gives you a breakdown, because when you look at the enemy section, which is just sort of 50 pages here, you can then just go over and it'll just break down each of all the space enemies down here for you. So it's nice and easy to find. So it's all hyperlinked. So if you want to jump in, find the Ancient Kraken, you can just jump in and find the stats for the Ancient Kraken. Right, let's just throw me back to the start. Initially, what is AetherDark? So AetherDark is realistically it's a space setting for traveling in space, traveling across to different planets, different areas, the hex crawl rules, as well as designing planets, all within this 300-page book. And we've got three new rules. So we've got the rules on the crew, which are the people that run your ship. We've got the ship itself, and then you've got siege weapons. So the crew, think of that as a character, as a collective character. Your ship will also be a collective sort of character in the rules. And then siege is just the ability to sort of ram and have conflict with other people's ships in space. First section of the book really is the crew, and then you can have their own stats here. Crew morale, so as they start to take damage, they might try and run away. They have got recovery to try and sort of calm them down. As they die, you're going to get new people in. They have their own specific actions that they can take place during combat and on normal turns. They've also got this wonderful mechanic where it's like this downtime thing so if you're down on a planet, a la Firefly, interacting and doing the normal player character stuff, the crew are still doing things, and there'll be some actions that they do. They will attack during combat. There is things like being boarded and boarding other crews as well. Injuries and all the gear is coming up here. They're going to get better as well. So as you advance and the players advance, the crew are going to advance. And as they advance, they're going to gain reputations and specializations that are going to make them even better and more useful during combat. And so specializations here, things like quartermaster, bosun, carpenter, chef, engineer, and Kurgan. They're also going to get reputations, and reputations will give them, it will give normally you or the ship or your players some sort of special abilities that will, enhance the gameplay or, increase the movability or the speed of the ship. This is the events that we're talking about. So there will be events when they're at port, and there's a random D100 table here. So, for example, the harbour master's daughter wants to run away with the crew. So, yeah, there's just little things, and it gives you an idea that there's 5 different ways. There's 5 different ways of playing them out. So you can either play it properly as role playing, loosely play it as an idea of this is what happened when the players come back, abstract it out and just talk about it narratively, keep the players out of it entirely and just sort of have it happen. And when the players come back to the ship, or if you don't want to have these things, it does have the rules here just to ignore them. Ships. So this is a big section of the book, which is detailing the ships, the stats, which is things like speed, maneuverability, how many attacks they get, the hull. Size is probably one of the most important stats because that's the multiple for when you're buying upgrades or provisions or crew or anything along those lines. It doesn't have a meaning in the game apart from a multiplier point of view, so it's quite an important one. The crew required is the minimum amount of crew that you need. The maximum crew is obviously the maximum people that you can get in so people can comfortably sleep. Provisions, how much food you're going to need to feed everyone on your ship. Cargo slots, so if you're going to be buying and trading throughout the ether, you're going to need to fill up your cargo slots. And then how you land on places. Deck space is important, and if you're making your own ship or running a ship, there are 4 different things that all ships have to have. So they have to have steering, propulsion, crew space, and cargo space. Okay, so this will just detail how all this works. We've got then the ship's types and activities. So different ships will have different types of propulsion, which we'll come on to, how they maneuver, the different speeds and provisions and where they keep it and things like that for your ships. So the first one we're going to look at is the Arcane Jet. And this is a ship. It's the most common route. So this is where you just use jets at the back of the ship. And each form of propulsion will have a sort of an activity table here, so things that can go wrong, and just explains in details how the propulsion works. Then we've got some examples of the ships with all their stats, how much they cost, speed, armor class, hull size, etc. Some random sort of decks, and then plans and layouts for the ships, as well as sort of keys as well. Chain stars. So this is, think about pod racers in Phantom Menace. So sort of being pulled along by the chains at the stars. So that is sort of zooming out. So that's the second form of propulsion in the game. We've then got crystal sails. So these are your big classic. If you think back to, the sort of the 1500s, 1600s, when we had sort of gigantic barges and sailed ships and galleons. So this is sort of magical sails that propulse ships through space. Divine towers. This took me a while to get my head around. And then luckily there's this image here. So these are sort of magical, sort of things you'd imagine clerics just sailing around in space. And they are in a sort of tower here that just magically goes through space. Incantation. This is rowing, which is just, I love the idea of people just sat on the deck of a ship rowing themselves across into space on long ships and great teremes. Necro furnaces are, you've got to go with kind of evil ships, because the propulsion it uses, the sort of coal you could say, is souls of people. And then we've got the oil slick heart, which, as it sounds, uses ether-rich oils to sort of pump through to the ships and then sort of drive them through space. And then I think finally we've got the steam engine, which, again, as you sound, so it's a little bit like the oil one, but it's going to chug along using coals, etc. Section here about acquiring an ether ship. You could buy one, but it's unlikely the players are ever going to have enough money, so you can salvage, prior ownership, theft, which is probably going to be the most fun way of getting your ships, but obviously bearing in mind, if you steal ships, people might steal ships from you, or just ride along in space. If you want to design your own ships, if your players have got enough money, they can design a ship from scratch. As a games master, you can be using this to design a specific type of ship for the NPCs, whatever it wants to be. And then it was just examples of sizes and hulls, etc. here for great ships. Upgrades. So as you want to upgrade your ships into luxury cabins, smuggler's hold, a la Millennium Falcon, armoured plating, rams, siege batteries, different types of ammunition, and then the specific rare upgrades are in here. Things like a mithril rudder, which is going to add +1 to manoeuvrability. There's just so much in here if you want to be designing, for players or games master, designing your own ships. Don't worry, as we go on into the book, there's a lot of examples of pre-made books, and we're now about a third of the way through the book, and we're going to get into gameplay. A fair bit of this is kind of, it really does sort of sit alongside the ShadowDark rules. So if you're looking at distances, you're going to run the distances close, near, far, sight. So it's the same titles, but slightly different. So close being 5 foot, near 30 foot, far is range of weapons and spells, then sight obviously is within sight itself. Then we've got some optional rules for artillery, etc. Naval combat works slightly differently. So the players will take all their actions first, the crew will then take their action, then you'll do the speed checks, then you'll do the maneuverability. So during the regular and crew actions, you will still roll for the speed and roll for the maneuverability, but they don't actually happen mechanic wise until everyone else has actually decided what they're going to do. All the rules, as you can imagine, are in here for how naval movement rules works, pursuit rules, shipboarding actions, which is incredibly fun. So obviously you can go in, pursue someone, pull alongside, pull the boat in, and then just jump across. And if you can't jump across, you can always swim across into space, which is crazy, but I appreciate it's in here. Then you've got the siege weapons and the ramming rules in here, and the full boarding actions on how the boarding actions work, extra crew damage bonuses, etc. Attacking on mass combat, as you can imagine, they're going to need to abstract it down. If you've got a crew of 200-300 and you're getting 2 or 3 attacks, they need to sort of abstract it down. So it is covered in here. And then you've got a section here for fighting the Leviathans. So Leviathans are just gigantic space creatures. Again, think Empire Strikes Back, the worm creature that was within that planet. That sort of thing is what you're looking at. And then you've got the rules here for planet-side flight. So, like I say, all of this isn't just out in space. There is going to be an element of landing and taking off. So you've got the rules for when they come down, discover new planets. Don't worry, we're going to show you how to build a planet from scratch and the occupants of that planet and how all that works. Even that is covered in this book. So visibility for the ether, how far you can see, obviously with deck lighting, dim starlight, and then obvious ships sort of out far and far away. Optional rules here for pirate injuries. Don't make an option. Stick them in here. Make everyone lose a hand, arm, foot, eye, ear, or nose. It's how pirates should be. You know, if they've got everything, they're not really a pirate. Traveling in the ether is broken down into some, it's 4 or 5 basic sort of rules of how many events you're going to have as you're traveling, how it works, the sort of speed you've got to run, the provisions you're going to need, then astral navigation. You can break it down into multiple legs. So if you think about like it's not quite hyperspace because there's no sort of hyperspace movement in this. You are traveling at the speeds of the ship. So you're going to go as fast and as far as you need to go, but you will get unsafe, risky, and deadly routes, and unsafe and risky, deadly sort of speeds as well. Abstract exploration, so it is sort of, say, it's not exactly sort of, you know, like in a sort of standard role-playing game. This is more sort of, well, obviously I'm trying not to use the word abstract, but it's done in a way that is simple enough, but it's kind of like a giant area of a space, so to speak. I hope that makes sense. There is hex crawling in this, so this is where the sort of abstract bit comes in. So it very much feels like ShadowDark as a basic game, but it's just grander because you're now looking at several kilometers as opposed to, you know, just a sort of days or 2 days worth of travel on the hexes. And there is still an element of weather and provisions you're going to need, the speed, the crew size, the shifts, how long people are going to be taking. And then you've got the rules here for how fast, so lazy pace, regular pace, or full pace, depending when you're going to do hourly, daily, or weekly. So that's where the sort of a bit of the abstractation comes in as well. And it just details how far you're going to travel, because you're not going to want to, if you're going to be traveling for several months or weeks, you're not going to be wanting to roll stuff on a daily basis. That's kind of, I wouldn't want to sort of sit into that game. Provisions will just detail how much provisions the players need to be taking on a daily basis or per day, depending on obviously how many crew you're going to get. And then it details later what happens, obviously, if you haven't got enough provisions to go there. Surviving a wreck, if the hull goes down to 0, the ship isn't automatically destroyed. It just floats along in space and you're hoping to get rescued, really. There are a variety of port activities, so when you do land in a port, be a spaceport or a port on land, there are some crew assistance to the things your crew can do, some encounters as well. And this is where you can be looking to buy, sell goods, buying new food, armament, etc. on there. Trading cargo, so this is things that they will do in the port, so buying and selling of goods. So if you want to go on the full-on, I can't think of what the board game was, and it kind of reminds me of that, where all you're doing is kind of going around the board, buying and selling, discovering different goods at different planets, and then dropping them off. So if you want to play it like that, there was Elite, wasn't there? The computer game in the 80s, I think it was when I used to play it. Might have been late 80s, somewhere around there. And you were just going around in space, just, you know, traveling around, buying and selling goods. So obviously, you know, you could do ships and kill pirates and everything. So determine on how much your charisma will affect the price of goods, and things like taxes and tariffs, smuggling, loading and unloading cargo, so things that will go on. We've then got the base price goods that can be found on some of the spaceports or starports. As we go on later to make the planets, later on in the book, it will detail how you determine which places have which type of things to buy and sell. We're then into the Games Master advice, and this is just an open-ended bit, so it's like how to deal with crew, because obviously it's an abstract stat on there, but it's going to focus on the fiction, put the players first, make it personal, have partial characters for the crew members. I'd give some of them name, make them a little bit more human. You could even, if you wanted to, bring sort of crew members in as sort of PCs into the party. So there's lots of things, and you do things like infighting and claiming crews, etc. GMing with the ship, so make the ship important. Obviously, as a games master, it says things like target the ship, put common threats on it. The ship isn't destroyed once the hull gets to 0. You can encourage the players to customize it, name some of the ships, make them famous, do ship board-to-board combat. There's always, so you can allow them to have multiple ships on there. Games mastering for exploration. Also have safe worlds, so don't make every world somewhere where there's going to be combat all the time, because there will be planets out there with nothing on, or there will be planets out there of lower. If you think about Stargate, if you ever watched Stargate SG-1, they obviously had those different planets that they went to, and there was different tech levels of planets, etc. as well. But then the next sort of 5 or 6 pages just cover some ideas of things that the players can be doing. So things like having a great hunt, which just sort of explains a sort of mission that they have, treasure fleets, hidden treasures, and some random tables. Bounty hunting with some examples of random bounties and people to go and capture. And then destinations of worlds. So as you are creating worlds, you're going to want to roll them and write them into this table, alongside giving them interesting names as well. And now we're getting into the sort of hex crawling and the rules on how you sort of generate the maps. And if you ever played, was it? I can't think what the game was called. Eclipse, things like that. So everything is on hexagon, and you're going to create the hexagon, and then within the large hexagons, which is an area of space, you're going to have the small hexes for them to sort of travel around. So give the sector a name, and give each part of it, say as you're rolling it, make it a little bit more interesting. So things like you've got the endless void here, early colonial rim, etc. And then when you decide doing the world, you are going to think about things like moons. So if you think about our galaxy, we've got the sun, so for the example here, and then as we go out, other planets, and then each planet will potentially have continents, and then deltas, and then cities. So there's quite a lot in there to work with. So this bit talks about the ether itself. So the ether is really everything that's out within the world. So it's the area of space that people will travel and go into, and you got to think about it because it's one of obviously the downsides of having a hex crawl type thing is not only you going north, south, east, west, you can go up and down in the axis. So as you're moving around beside things, there are no certain truths, dim starlights, etc., and a variety of different worlds. So you are going to be moving in a kind of abstract way, because you're sort of going out on a 2D plane, but you kind of got to imagine it is going to be sort of 3D as well as you move on. But astral civilizations, so there will be lots of different civilizations on there with different techs levels as well as the players come on. You can include magic and spell casting and things like that in the space. The section here about gravity and the physics element of it. It doesn't take it too seriously, but it does say sort of try to be a little bit realistic when you are dealing with stuff. We're then into, I like this section, because when I first looked at it, because I was looking at one page at the time, I thought, oh, there's only 6 ether mutations here, but there's actually 20. So yeah, it's a little bit better. Terrain. So this is then sailing through the ether and how you then create terrain. And as you'd imagine from a ShadowDark type rule book, it's going to have lots of different events when you are creating the terrain. So you've got a D20 here for the clear ether terrain events, and then the next few pages just detail out from 1 to 20 a little bit more information. So we've got the civilized events, wild, and then we're into piercing the nebula, so the nebula terrain events as well. Civilized nebula, and then wild nebula and astral abnormalities. Worlds. We are a third of the way, 2/3 of the way through the book now. So I say it's a long video because there's so much in here, And this section really is just about how you create a world, and a world from scratch with the different gravities on there, whether you want a sort of circular world, a flat world system here, and then weird worlds with weird system. I've never seen this. You normally get sort of D6 or 2D10s. This is D4 and a D6. I don't think I've ever seen that in a game before. And then just more details here explaining on how it works. And then ruin worlds, uninhabited planets, inhabited planets, and then just more and more tables, details on local customs, on how they're going to treat you, things they're going to be wearing and clothes, and variety of other stuff in here, whether they've got any sort of superstitions as well. And then we saw the prices of the resources. This is how you randomly roll the resources and the values on the planets that you're landing on, because say you could just turn this into like Elite, just traveling around different planets, be good guys, just buying and selling, make your money that way. You go to a planet, find out what's rare, so different rare resources. You've already been to a previous planet, you know that you can get that cheap because they've got an abundance of it. You can go back there and bring it back and sell it for a massive margin, and then potentially you could go and buy your super ship and design your ship from scratch. Now the rest of the book is enemies and bestiaries. So as you'd imagine, some of the ships that we're going to come up against will have crews and crewmen and variety of different stats. And so we've got the civilian ships initially. Each of the ships here will have its own stats, as you'd expect from a ShadowDark-esque game. And then you've got the name of the ships and then the sort of layout of them as well. And things like smugglers, raft, crusader ships, which are your sort of the ones being pulled across. Then we've got things like the Echoes, which is the Tayreems, navy ships with the sails, lots and lots of pirates in here, and then Leviathans and how to deal with monsters as Leviathans fighting them. So we've got this giant astral kraken here with its ridiculous stats all the way up to, so we've got the young, ancient, adult, attached tentacles, severed tentacles that are still going to carry on fighting. And then you've got congealed nebulas, neon enigmas here, Yunlith, I think that is pronounced, which is this giant weird whale looking thing. Then astral beasts and variety of rodents, and this is just absolutely mad. And finally we are into the back of the book, and we have got just some character sheets here. I say character sheets, they are character sheets really for the ships, which is going to include, actually I can rotate this round a little bit so you can see the crew, speed, hull, maneuverability, AC, size, how many attacks you get, normally between 1, 2 and 3, ramming, ammunition, munitions, and checking them all off, any sort of special upgrades, etc. that you're going to get in there. And then finally you've got some useful tables like right at the front of the book, so things like how to find landing gaps, taking off, crash, the rules on crash, I was going to say how to crash, the speed that you're going to travel, etc. So that's what you get for your 308 pages of space traveling insane madness. It's absolutely jam-packed of space goodness, I think is probably the best way to describe it. I absolutely love this. I really like ShadowDark as a system. I'd say it's taken over the world of TTRPGs, and the ability now to go into space. I'm a big fan of Traveller, and I've thought about, and I've been talking to one of my friends, whether we convert Traveller to ShadowDark. Not going to bother now. I don't need to, because this is going to give me everything. The Traveller rules are a little bit sometimes a little bit complicated and can take a little bit of time to roll out planets and things like this. This isn't. It's incredibly quick. It's everything you'd expect ShadowDark to be, with all the hex rules of creating not only your sort of sectors of space, and then you've got the larger sectors that then go out beyond that as well, but you can roll up your ships. You've got crew attacks, your crews gain experience. I would do that, let them name some of the crews, bring them into the party here and there as the main party members get injured. They're all going to gain experience and go up as they go out, and you're going to encourage them to level up by actually going out and discovering space as well. I really like the idea of, if you want to do it not from a treasure point of view, because obviously ShadowDark XP is really about collecting gold. This is also going to encourage people to go out and actually discover new planets, new areas of space. I honestly cannot believe just how much is in here, but how much you're going to get within this Kickstarter. I'll say the book might slightly change. I don't think it is. It looks like a very finished product to me. So the layout, there's little bits where I think the layout could have been slightly better, because you know, it's when I'm talking about the trade goods at one area and then it goes right the way to the back on how to actually create the planets where the trade goods are going to get, you know, where you're going to find them. I get it, but for me it was just a little bit initially, you know, my first couple of read-throughs, it was a little bit harder to sort of retain that information to get backwards and forwards. But I created a couple of random ships, which was great fun. Created a few ships that I actually wanted to play. I had a bit of a sort of mess around with the boarding rules and the ramming combat, which was incredibly fun. I, you know, big Assassin's Creed fan, which was the one that was in Egypt. I can't remember, not in Egypt, the Greek one. Was it Odyssey? I think it was, where you're just ramming the triremes. It just felt very much like that. Yes, you can abstract it in your mind. I'm probably going to, when I run this, I'm gonna want to put grids down, because you're gonna want to do that fun space combat, all hexed, and then moving all the different ships around. I honestly cannot believe how much Mika has put into this. It's utterly amazing. So the Kickstarter is probably live now. Jump on it, back it, support it. From my point of view, please, you know, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe to my channel too. So highly support this Kickstarter. Let's get it funded. Let's smash through the stretch goals. I absolutely love this, and I can't wait to get a physical copy. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe to the channel. My name's Aether from Dyslexia. I'll see you on the next video. Thank you for watching.